just one bad decision that has the potential to, yes, ruin your marriage, but also there's a lot of guys in my groups that have had pretty significant career consequences. There's some men who, the relationship with their children has been really significantly harmed by what they've done to their kid's mother, right? And so I like calling it self-mastery because it puts you on this introspective trajectory to essentially become the master of self, right? Because again, the goal is not perfection, because humans just aren't perfect. It's just the nature of how we are. The goal is understanding your imperfections so that they don't bother you. The root cause of your behavior, right? You'll hear people talk about this a lot being the key to recovery. And I agree, but I disagree. I agree, and I have other episodes on this around how I agree. But I think the concept of the root cause is a little oversimplified. It makes it sound like there is a single reason why you did the things that you did. And that's a bit dangerous because what you'll find is the root cause is actually far bigger than we realize. I'll use me, for example, right? I have a root cause. Anybody who's read my book has heard me talk about it in the book. You've heard me talk about the podcast, right? In the end, I can summarize mine to really one sentence, right? I grew up and wondered if I mattered, right? Because a lot of the people in my childhood didn't really make me feel like I was significant. And so I spent the rest of my freaking life proving my significance. And my process addiction was the root cause, if you want to call it that, was I measured my success or my mattering by how many men were envious of me and wanted to be me, wanted the life that I had, wanted to have the things that I have, the created things that I created. And then how many women wanted to sleep with me, how many women were attracted to me, how many women wanted me to give their attention, how many women wanted me to give me their attention, right? That was really how I measured it, right? How many men want to be me? How many women want to be with me, right? Here's the challenge with simplifying like that. It's actually so much bigger. And again, like, yes, that's the root cause, but I'll give you some examples, right? So let's just continue with me, for example, just because it's easy for me to talk about. There's inadequacies, right? So the reason I'm striving so much, a lot of high achieving men don't know this, but achievement is almost always birthed out of insecurity and inadequacy, right? I'm not enough the way I am today, and I will be enough when I get more, right? And so there is this endless accumulation. I'm not okay if I just stop today, right? That's not okay. I need more, right? So there's inadequacies and insecurities, right? And there's a ton of stuff in terms of where those came from, right? There's hierarchies, social hierarchies, right? Like, I'm down here and so many men are up here and better than me. There's insecurities around your appearance and, I don't look successful enough. I don't have enough. My resume is not thick enough. My financial portfolio is not big enough. My house is not nice enough, right? And those are just like some examples, right? And then we have a whole nother plethora of how you believe people about the beliefs you have about people, right? And what they think of you. So, people only respect people like this, or people judge people like that, or nobody cares about people until they cross this threshold, right? So there's all these beliefs around how we gain approval, how we matter in society, etc. These are just like a couple examples. There's hundreds upon hundreds. There's a bunch of like materialism beliefs of things that I feel like I need to acquire so that I can prove to everybody that I matter. I mean, hundreds upon hundreds, truly. I mean, that's how big. So yes, while you can summarize the root cause into a sentence, it's so much bigger than people realize. And the reason I'm recording this episode is really two reasons. One, I don't think you're in recovery unless you understand how big this thing really is. I don't like the word root cause. I prefer, you guys have probably heard me say this, right? I prefer calling this thing a process addiction. And the reason I like using that word is it indicates that the brain has these processes that it is relentlessly pursuing, is compulsive around or addicted to or sees value in. And it's your job in recovery to figure out what those are. And it's way more than one. It's truly hundreds, if not thousands. Okay. There's a lot of things that we are thinking about that drive our day-to-day behavior. Some of those things are good things. Some of those things are going to get you into trouble. With your marriage or even with yourself, right? Integrity issues. Okay. I like calling it a process addiction because it's that big. Okay, that's reason number one why I'm sharing this with you is you got to appreciate the size of this thing, or you're going to relapse. Right? That's why we see almost 70% of men having a significant relapse within 5 years, is because I don't think they were in recovery. I think they were just in sobriety, right? They found a way to stop doing these things. And then they're like, hey, see, look at me. I've been a year or 2 years or 3 years that I haven't done it before. But again, if you don't change the beliefs and the brain processes that drove the behavior in the first place, you are not in recovery. And I believe you are at risk of relapse. I always, in my book, I talk about it's like the third chapter or something. I talk about how recovery is on a spectrum. And if you are down on the unhealthy side of the spectrum, right, you just get discovered, all right, you're beginning recovery, you're way down on the unhealthy side, right, the unsober side. And relapse is a lot more likely down there. It's not going to take that much for you to make a bad decision. But as we start recovering, we start marching up towards the healthier side of the spectrum. And the closer and closer you get over there, the harder and harder it is for you to act out. Right? There's a lot more inner turmoil, a lot more second guessing yourself, a lot of talking yourself out of things. It's that healthy inner talk that keeps you from making the bad decisions. Right? But here's the thing. If you're lower down on that spectrum, it's more likely that it's going to happen. And I think a lot of guys, because they're so focused on sobriety and not recovery, they're on the unhealthy side of the spectrum, even though they're not doing the same behaviors. Right? So they're actually not that far away from relapse. The second reason that I am recording this episode is for the married men here. And that's because your wife is going to need to know. I mean, trust is gone. So the only way that she is going to be able to stay with you and have any resemblance of safety while in this new kind of recovery marriage with you is if she understands how the heck this happened. And that's not just this simplified explanation of your root cause, right? It's this greater understanding of all of the things that went into it, where it came from, when this all started, why it started, right? It's the understanding of the entire web of your process addiction that actually allows you to dismantle it, change it, and protect yourself and protect your marriage from you doing any of this again. Now, another word that I don't necessarily love is recovery, because again, I think it's too simple, right? It's the opposite of the unhealthy behaviors. But again, similar to root cause, I also think that that's too simple, because to me, I like to call it self-mastery, because what we know about humans is they're incredibly complex. And it would take a lifetime, truly a lifetime, to understand all of your brain processes and find all of the problematic ones. Most of the time, it's not your fault. It's because we don't know it's a problem until we know it's a problem, right? That's why sex addiction and all this cheating and infidelity, guys are always baffled when they look at it like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I got here. Well, it's because of what I just said, right? We don't really see the problems in this belief system until it becomes a problem. So the reason I like to call it self-mastery is it sets you up really to get into a container where you're continuously understanding yourself. You're continuously understanding how your beliefs formed, where they came from, because here's what's going to happen. You'll start to identify some really significant aspects of your childhood, your teenage years, and even your early adult years. And you'll start identifying these really impactful events that made you adapt. Right. It was again, it could be somebody singling you out and talking down to you. It could be somebody overlooking you and choosing somebody else over you. Right. It doesn't have to be these massive traumas. It could be this little life event where you feel like, man, if I just had this, this, and this, I would have been chosen that day. Right. If I would have just had those three things, that person wouldn't have embarrassed me in front of everybody. So then we spend, it sounds so bizarre, but then we spend, the rest of our life really unknowingly to us trying to acquire these things so that these adverse events don't happen to us. Right. But it's that understanding that helps you form what I like to call self-mastery. It's this constant understanding that I need to be careful because I have really big gaps in my mental processes that if I execute on them perfectly, they can lead to a ton of success in your career, success in your friendships and relationships, success in your kind of philanthropic activities. But if you execute on those in the wrong way, It could end in an emotional affair, a physical affair, just one bad decision that has the potential to, yes, ruin your marriage, but also there's a lot of guys in my groups that have had pretty significant career consequences. There's some men who, the relationship with their children has been really significantly harmed by what they've done to their kid's mother, right? And so I like calling it self-mastery because it puts you on this introspective trajectory to essentially become the master of self, right? Because again, the goal is not perfection because humans just aren't perfect. It's just the nature of how we are. The goal is understanding your imperfections so that they don't bother you, right? They don't ruin your life. They don't end up in making any of these kind of unwanted decisions, right? So in many ways, you end up acting, not perfect, but closer to perfect while still being imperfect the whole time. You just developed a self-mastery lifestyle so that these things aren't disrupting the very things that you cherish most. Now, I want to end with giving you guys a couple examples of what to do, right? Because discovering your process addiction or root cause, whatever you want to call it, it's really important, but because of how big it is, there's a lot to be done there. So I want to give you guys a couple kind of options. Number one, without question, are intensives. In-person intensives. Okay. And there's a couple different ways to do this. I offer them as a part of my groups. And there's other intensives out there. A lot of my friends and colleagues have group intensives that they offer. But it doesn't have to be a formal group intensive. You could also just find because again, the problem with group intensives is they're usually on a particular date, right? And if your life's in a way where you don't have the flexibility to attend that particular date, then you're going to have to do an individual intensive, which is cool. So, and here's the thing I love about individual intensives is find a therapist on my podcast or on somebody else's podcast or a YouTube video or something that you really resonate with. You're like, I like that guy. Send them an email. A lot of therapists, not all of them, but a lot of therapists do in-person multi-day intensives. And here's the neat thing is, let's say that therapist is only licensed in California and you live in New Jersey. It's not a big deal because for the intensive, you'll just fly out there, grab a hotel for a few nights, do 6 to 10 hour days with this therapist and dive more into the root. And here's where this is different than therapy. Therapy is great, but here's kind of the challenge is in an hour session or a 90-minute session, the real challenge with therapy is we kind of have to pick a thing and then we have to go deep on that thing, right? And then really next week, we can't really pick another thing because in 60 to 90 minutes, that one thing's not far from done, right? The first session really just kind of exposed it, put awareness to it. But then we need 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions to really figure out kind of how we're going to modify this belief system or this faulty pattern. Okay. And then after that's done, okay, cool. 5, 6, 7 visits later, we're on to the next thing. Well, the problem is there's usually 20, 30, 40, 50 problematic things in somebody's process addiction. And so while therapy is great, here's the challenge with sex addiction recovery is there is a sense of urgency here because we need to, again, get ourselves on that healthy side of the recovery spectrum as fast as possible, especially if you're married. Because I don't know about you, but my wife was not going to tolerate a slip or a relapse, right? She was not going to tolerate that. She needed me in great recovery and she needed me to be honest and never make this mistake again. So there was a sense of urgency in there. And that's why I love intensives. Now I'm still biased towards group intensives. And here's why. The challenge is therapists are wonderful, but it's just one person's opinion, right? So they're going to do their best to help create aha moments for you. Because that's really what you're paying for with these intensives, right? It's not so much healing because healing takes more than 3 days. But it's that, okay, holy smokes, I understand me now. I understand how all of this happened. And then from there, we go on through the recovery process of making all the modifications. The cool thing about groups and the reason groups are so popular and all the research says that peer support groups are the most effective thing you can do is you're getting a bunch of other people's opinions and outlooks. And so you're creating way more aha moments. And this is why I always encourage, try to find a group full of people like you, right? Similar goals, similar aspirations, similar place in life, similar mindset. Because obviously the more like you they are, the more and more you guys can have, very similar experiences, which then again, statistically increases the chances of you having those light bulb aha moments about why all of this happened, right? Understanding your process addiction. Now, again, if you can't access that, that's fine. Therapy, I've done a ton of just one-on-one therapy intensives and they're extremely effective as well. The other thing that you can do is consume books and podcasts, YouTube videos, etc. And the reason for this is, again, we're trying to hear as many just concepts and ideas as we can about, again, your past, your present. You're trying to put all the pieces together so that you can start tracing these breadcrumbs back to where this all came from, right? That's the whole concept of the root cause. Here's the only challenge with books and podcasts or any kind of passive resource that you're consuming is, I love my book. I think it's very helpful. A lot of guys have found it helpful. The problem is I don't know who you are. I've never met you before, or maybe I have, depending on who's listening to this podcast. But because I didn't write the book for you, we're going to miss a lot of context. And so that's the only reason I still guide men towards in-person intensives is it's this neat opportunity to really make customized feedback and customized recovery plan for you as an individual for your specific process addiction. Now, your third option is, again, therapy. It's not like therapy is not going to help with all this. A really good therapist is going to help you retrace all of these things. That's not a bad thing. The only reason I'm partial to intensives and even passive materials is you can increase the speed at which you're consuming it. Now, there is such a thing as too much recovery. Okay. So don't do that. But find that sweet spot where you're basically, you have the opportunity to assemble everything that you need to figure out how this happened and create a plan so you can get it out of your life. And here's the last thing I'll leave you with. I have never met a man who has mastered self who has continued to slip and relapse. Okay. Self-mastery is the name of the game. You need to figure out, yes, the root cause, but more importantly, you need to figure out a way of living so that you can prevent any of these harmful beliefs and kind of these, whatever you want to call them. I call them pathologies, but whatever you want to call these beliefs in your head that you developed early in life as adaptations to help you. And in many ways, they made you extremely successful. They're going to cause you harm, though, if you have not mastered self and figured out a way to prevent these from affecting your life, right? In my own recovery, there's a ton of things that I have gotten past that I feel like are potentially out of my life permanently and have not continued to haunt me. But there are one or two or three of my brain processes that I feel them. Sometimes I feel them daily. Sometimes I feel them once a month, but they are there. And those things are going to threaten the safety that my wife and I have built. So it's my self-mastery that I have developed that prevents those things from coming back into my life. But again, I've never met a man who has mastered self who continues to slip and relapse.